Hello, students. Good day. Welcome back to Mr. Lawhon's AP European History Notes. I know, guys, it's always so much fun. Well, you know what's really fun about today, guys, is there's not a lot of notes. So, yay! Let's kind of jump into this and kind of rock this out and get this over with. So, our essential question today, 1.4, because yesterday was 1.3b, because we did 1.3, which is not in the book. It's the origins of Christianity, but I felt like you needed to understand that. So this is going to be 1.4. How how did Mongol rule shape Russia's development? Now, we haven't really talked about European history very much, but we've talked about like France and England, a little bit of Italy and maybe Bohemia. And one place we haven't talked about is Russia. Now, the whole purpose of doing today's notes and talking about what we're going to talk about is throughout this course, you're going to see Russia always kind of being the backward, slow to do everything European power. And today we'll kind of give you an understanding of why Russia is usually technologically, intellectually behind the trends of Western Europe. Now, they eventually catch up, but it takes a very long time. So, how did Mongol rule shape Russia's development? Pause if you need to. All right, let's talk about medieval Russia. So, Russia in the 10th century. Guys, remember, 10th century is the 900s, right? Century to hundreds is -1. Hundreds to centuries is add 1. All right, so where is Russia? What does Russia look like? Well, today, guys, Russia is on the east coast of Europe, and not east coast of Europe, but it's on the eastern edge of Europe, and it covers anywhere from parts of the Middle East to parts of Asia, parts of Europe. It's kind of its own an area that spans a huge distance. But if you look at Russia in the 900s, it was right around in this area right here. Okay, you can see, guys, Eastern Europe is over to the left, countries that we haven't really talked about yet. So, Prince Vladimir of Kiev receives a delegation of Muslims, Roman Catholics, Jews, and Orthodox Christians. This is in the 10th century, and Russia is ruled kind of by these different areas and these different princes, right? Well, the Prince of Kiev, Vladimir, says, you know what? I want to choose a religion for Russia. And he has all these choices: Muslims, Roman Catholics, Jews, Orthodox Christians. And guess what he chooses, guys? He chose Greek Orthodoxy to be the religion of Russia. So do you guys remember how we talked about when the Roman Empire split? It was the other day, 1.3. The Roman Empire split between an Eastern empire and a Western empire, right? The Eastern Empire was the Byzantine Empire, okay? This was like the Roman Empire where Constantine fled a little bit east, right? And the Western Empire was the Roman Empire. Now, eventually, guys, the Roman Empire gets invaded and falls apart, and the new power is the Byzantine Empire, which is just the Eastern Roman Empire that Constantine set up, okay? So anyway, Russia is located in Eastern Europe, and they had close ties to this old Byzantine Greek Empire. That's kind of traces of it are still around. Now, Russia was by no means, it was like anybody else, France and England. Well, it was even worse than France and England. They were not united really in any way. All of these different Russian princes lived in all these different principalities that you can kind of see on this map right here, yes? And much like the nobles and the wealthy landowners and rulers of France and England, they didn't get along. They all kind of wanted to do their own thing, and they all kind of fought each other for power. So not really unified, right? So some principalities, they all kind of had different governments because, let's face it, if you lived in more Greek areas, you might be ruled by an aristocracy or a group of wealthy people like on a council. Some areas had monarchies or a king or a prince. Some areas that were really influenced by the Greeks might have even had democracies, all right, which were councils made up of free adult males that voted on things. So once again, Russia's kind of a mess because it's so massive and covers such a large different group of cultures. Now, freemen included military leaders. There were these groups called boyars or wealthy landowners. Guys, boyars should be highlighted yellow. I guess I missed that one. So their society was divided up by, like I said, freemen, military leaders. The freemen were military leaders, boyars, wealthy landowners, merchants, peasants, or serfs. These were all the free peoples of Russia. But of course, they, like everybody else, engaged in slavery. All right. Slave or conquered people, guys, were at the very bottom of society. All right, so just a brief rundown of Russia in the 10th century, right before these guys called the Mongols invade. Pause if you need to. All right, the Mongol invasion, 1243 through 1480. Now, before we get into this, guys, I think it's important to tell you that, there was a lot of great empires that kind of swept through Europe. All right. When the Roman Empire fell apart, you had the Byzantine Empire, right? Eastern Roman Empire. But then you had this new group of people called the Muslims. And the Muslim Empire, guys, or the Islamic Empire, started to conquer pretty much the old Roman Empire. And they were the big power, guys. The Muslim Empire was the big power up until 1243. All right. They conquered parts of southern Europe. They conquered all the way up into Spain. They controlled parts of northern Africa, the Middle East, right? But the new group comes in that wipes out the Muslim Empire are the Mongols. These guys are the new powerful group of people on the scene. And in the 13th century, 1200s, you can see 1243, Mongols conquer China, they conquer the Islamic Empire, and they conquer Russia. They have, guys, a massive empire. Now, one of the main guys that everybody knows about the Mongols is Genghis Khan. All right. Maybe sometime, I guarantee some of you in your life, maybe it was way back in 7th grade world history in junior high, you learned about Genghis Khan or Kublai Khan or all the Khans. Okay. These guys were the leader of the Mongols, and they invaded Russia in about 1223. All right. Was this what Genghis Khan looked like? I don't know. Maybe, but it was a cool picture. So, anyway. All right. So, the Mongols, when they conquered, they stationed their own officials in Russian towns to collect taxes, because that's one of the things you do as a conqueror is you start collecting taxes from the people that you conquered. And guys, that word conscript is supposed to be bold yellow, highlighted yellow, and conscript Russians into the army. So conscript or conscription is a word that you guys are going to need to know. It literally means you're forced to serve in whatever military that you're in, right? So if you are conscripted, you are forced to serve in the military. So the Mongols came into Russia, and after they conquered, they took their men and said, hey, you have to serve in our military now. Okay? So guys, what you're seeing here, guys, is the Russians slowly becoming Mongolized, conquered and brought under the culture of the Mongols, okay? So, guys, here's a map of the Mongol Empire. The pink, guys, is pretty much the Mongol, or it's called the Golden Horde. That's what the nickname for the Mongol Empire is. And you can see the Russian areas up in the green that were conquered, that were part of, like I said, Russia, but the Mongols conquered them. Now, guess what, guys? Islam became the official religion of the Mongols. Why? Because they pretty much conquered the old Islamic Empire. All right, and basically, Islam and Mongol culture was culturally spread to Russians. So there's a lot of Russian people that are going to have Islamic ideals and Islamic culture and Islamic dress and ways of life. Now, most Russians still manage to keep their governments alive because when conquering people conquer you, for the most part, they kind of let you live life as you normally lived it. As long as you pay taxes to them, they kind of leave you alone because they don't want to put too much pressure on you and force too much change, because then you might start constantly rebelling against them, right? So they left their governments kind of intact, and they left kind of Orthodox Christianity intact. So what you see, guys, is from here on in, Russians are going to be a mix of things, but they're primarily going to be Orthodox Christians. Okay? Now, Russian nobles made themselves, remember, they're all divided, right? They all made themselves very wealthy by serving their Mongol overlords. So they would do whatever the Mongols told them to do, and that made them super wealthy. So what you see, guys, is the Mongols know that these nobles are divided, and they're going to kind of play them off on each other. And all these nobles, all they kind of really care about is making money and not really being a unified Russia. It's pretty brilliant on the Mongols' part to keep them all divided and not trusting each other. Now, Mongols are also going to make Russia culturally different than Western Europeans. Think about these people that are kind of from the steppe area of Asia, all right? And they conquer you. You're going to dress differently than Western Europeans, right? You're going to talk differently than Western Europeans. You're going to have different religious ideas than Western Europeans. So, this is why, guys, Russia is going to be behind everybody else. You're going to see, guys, that Western Europe is going to start growing and thriving. This thing called the Renaissance is going to happen. And for the most part, Russia kind of misses all that stuff. All right? Why? Because they got conquered by the Mongols. Pause if you need to. Well, guys, it doesn't stay like that. Over time, just like any empire, guys, Mongol rule fades, and slowly, these wealthy Russian princes start to slowly take back land and territory over time. Eventually, Russians led by this guy, the Grand Duke Dmitry of Moscow, a future capital of a united Russia much later, Dmitry of Moscow, guys, is able to defeat Mongol forces in 1380 and kind of kick them out of the Russian provinces. Okay? Now, by the 15th century, this guy named Ivan III, Ivan III, the Great, Ivan the Great, is going to bring all northern Russia under his control and slowly start the idea of uniting Russia. But there's going to be a problem, guys. Russian nobles are so used to doing their own thing far more than the French and far more than the English. The idea of unity is kind of a dream, and it's going to be a dream that's not going to be realized for a very long time. So, once again, Moscow is going to become the new political capital instead of Kiev. And like I said, guys, the Russians are going to be behind. They're going to be conquered people. They're going to have strange customs compared to other Europeans, strange forms of dress, strange language, strange religious ideas compared to other people. So they're going to develop at a slower and different rate than other Western Europeans. Okay? So if we had to say, why is Russia so backward as far as compared to Western Europeans in European history? The answer is, well, backward's a bad term, guys. Why are they so different? How about that? The answer is they got conquered by the Mongols, and Western Europe didn't. Okay? Guys, that's the end of the notes, I think. Oh, yeah. Why is this important? Like I said, throughout this class, we're going to notice how Russia and Eastern Europe developed differently than Western Europe, and that's partly why. Okay? All right, guys, that's the end of the notes. I'm going to leave you there. I'll see you in class tomorrow. Have a good night.